Hey guys, it's Protendo, and Breath of the Wild 2 is easily the most highly anticipated game in the Switch's future. I mean, this game was already a big deal before this year's E3, but after the new trailer dropped, things just exploded into a whole new level of Zelda hype. Prior to Nintendo's E3 Direct, we really didn't know much about the sequel to Breath of the Wild. The trailer we got was definitely cool, but was intentionally very light on information about the game. However, after the latest trailer, it now feels like we have a better grasp on how the game will play, what changes it will make, and what story it could tell. But even considering everything that's been revealed, this game is still almost completely shrouded in mystery. We don't even know what the title is, because according to Nintendo, it will spoil an element of the game that hasn't yet been revealed. This of course has caused people to go wild with theories, ranging from what the title could be to attempting to predict the entire story of the game. So I decided to throw my hat into the ring, despite not theorizing all too often on this channel. Because not only do I think that Breath of the Wild 2 is hiding something, but I think that said thing is the game's main new feature. And I should probably stop saying thing since I'm actually referring to a person. The Princess of Hyrule and the namesake of the series herself, Zelda. My theory completely hinges off of the idea of a playable Zelda in Breath of the Wild 2, which I know is hardly an original take, but it's still something that I think is likely to happen. Playable Zelda has been a theory ever since we got the first Breath of the Wild 2 trailer back in 2019, and a lot of the evidence used 2 years ago still holds up now. Her prominence in the trailer, her randomly getting a new haircut, meaning that she would be easier to put in various armors and clothing without having to worry about her hair clipping through, it's solid stuff. But since then, we've gotten even more evidence as to why Nintendo might be leading towards a playable Zelda in this game. Last year, we got Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, a game that, while not being totally canon, gave this version of Zelda even more character and personality, as well as making her playable. It would truly be a shame for Nintendo to push her to the sideline again in this game after all the character building they've done for her, and the easiest way to make her as prominent as ever is, of course, to have her playable. Unfortunately, many have hopped off of the playable Zelda train because of the latest trailer. In it, we see Zelda falling down into a hole, and we proceeded to not see her for the rest of the trailer. This has a lot of people thinking that wherever Zelda fell into is where we'll have to rescue her from, meaning that her role in the game has just been reduced to an incredibly simple damsel in distress purpose. But I disagree. I think that Nintendo wants us to think that Zelda's role has been reduced in this title, only to sweep us off of our feet next year when they reveal that Link soaring through the sky is only half of this game, and Zelda's underground cavern exploration is where the real craziness lies. I mean, think about it. Aonuma has told us that the Zelda team is working hard to make the world of Breath of the Wild even better than it was in the original game. And while the floating islands that we saw in this E3's trailer are certainly impressive, they don't exactly seem like something so time-consuming that they would cause this game to release nearly 6 years after the original. However, that time frame becomes more reasonable if there's been something else added, an additional way to explore the Hyrule we already know and love. Allowing us to not only venture through the skies above Hyrule, but also the caves underneath it would make perfect sense, and there's a lot of evidence for this being the case. Firstly, we have the tone set by the game's trailers and what we can assume is its opening. We're shown Link and Zelda exploring this dark, ancient cavern, the only light coming from luminous stones speckling the walls and the torch in Zelda's hand. This is of course where they happen upon Ganondorf's corpse and the magical hand keeping him in place. Not only does this set a vibe for the game, but it also gives us a location, the Caves of Hyrule, the underside of what we explored throughout the entire first game. To me, it doesn't really make sense to begin the game in this manner and to solely follow it up with Link gliding through the clouds, because it doesn't feel thematically cohesive. Whether or not it's narratively cohesive is something I can't comment on since of course we still know next to nothing about the story. Though speaking of story, we also know that this game is supposed to be darker than Breath of the Wild is. And right now, the only evidence of that is the stuff that we see happening underground. There's this creepy atmosphere in that section of the game, and the first trailer highlights that perfectly. We've got the Ganon corpse, the lighting, the malice, it's all, both literally and figuratively, dark. But the moment we get to the surface, that darkness kinda disappears. Instead, we get a lot of the same vibes that we got in the first Breath of the Wild. Beauty, nature, and freedom. The music in both trailers sum it up perfectly. In the first one, we have an eerie, backwards tune, setting the tone for the dark and frightening nature of the caves underneath Hyrule. But in the second one, we have a triumphant, boisterous song that feels like it's paving the way for an incredible adventure. I think the differing nature of these trailers was very intentional and representative of what two tones Breath of the Wild 2 is going to try to balance. Link's journey, which will be largely similar to the first in terms of atmosphere, with the added bonus of some floating islands on the surface, and Zelda's journey, which will be where things are really shaken up, with a colder atmosphere and darker vibe. And this ties directly into why Nintendo hasn't revealed the title yet. Right now, we only know about what half of the game will be like. If the game is called, like, The Legend of Zelda Clouds and Caverns, then of course they wouldn't want to announce that right now when the clouds are all we've been introduced to. And as a final closing point, because I couldn't really find anywhere else to put this in the video, Age of Calamity has introduced the concept of Zelda using the runes from the Sheikah Slate. And she was pretty obsessed with the thing in the flashbacks from the first game. Interestingly, the slate hasn't made a single appearance in the trailers for Breath of the Wild 2, even though Link carried it with him throughout the entirety of the first game. Plus, he's got a magical arm now, which is clearly the game's main new item gimmick. The only place that it would make sense for the Sheikah Slate to be is with Zelda herself. And if she's just gonna sit out for the rest of the game, why even give it to her? Clearly, there are plans for Zelda in Breath of the Wild 2, and I'm very excitedly waiting to see what they are. But anyways guys, that's about it for this video. As always, I'd love to hear what you think. Do you expect Zelda to be playable in Breath of the Wild 2? What are your thoughts on exploring the caves underneath Hyrule as well as the sky? And most importantly, what do you think this game's title will be? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you all later. Protendo, out.